Hey guys, Political Junkie 2414 here, and welcome back to my next 2024 United States Senate election related video. Today we're going to be talking about the first of several key Senate races that will be playing out in just under 2 years. What I did was a couple days ago, I made a poll in which I asked you guys, which Senate race do you guys want me to make a video about first? And I gave you guys the choices of Arizona, Michigan, Montana, Ohio, and West Virginia. None of these are not the only states that I will be making, these are not the only states of Senate races I will be making videos on, but these are the first five. These were, they're all held by Democrats, technically an independent in Arizona. And, as you can see right now, Arizona's gotten 50%, but at the time, about a day later, I checked on it, and Arizona and Montana were tied at 44%, so they went into a runoff poll, and you guys chosen the runoff poll for Arizona to move forward and to be the first video. So Montana, so I will make a video about all of these key Senate races, but once again, it's still very early, and I'll probably make multiple videos on them. But Montana will come after this one. Then we're gonna go on to I guess Michigan or West Virginia. I think Michigan first, since that's alphabetically next, and then we'll go to West Virginia, then Ohio, and then we'll see how that plays out from there. But anyways, thank you. I wanted to thank everybody who responded to the poll. And just know that, if you do not answer the poll within 24 hours of me posting it, it's not, like you can't, answer it, but just know that I will probably have made a decision by then. I just don't like to wait around too long, and so, I'll give you guys a day. If you guys want me to add more time to that, just say something in the comments below. But anyways, getting on with the topic of the video, we're going to be talking about the Senate election in Arizona. And this is one that, is going to be a marquee race. This is going to be a key race for Democrats holding the Senate. As you know, Democrats are, statistically at a disadvantage in terms of the exposure factor. They are at a disadvantage. They hold 23 of the 34 seats that will be up in 2024. Republicans hold just 11, and most of the states on this map that are held by Republicans are will be have little to no chance of flipping to the Democrats. Some people may argue Missouri or Indiana could be closer, but realistically, they are not going to flip red. Maybe Mississippi gets a bit closer, but even then, I doubt that. None of these states are going to be within reach for the Democrats. And beyond that, you have Texas and Florida. These are really the only two pickup opportunities that I would say are sorry about that. There you go. Yeah, these are really the only two pickup opportunities that I would say are at least semi-realistic for Democrats. Texas, a lot more so than Florida, because Florida, Rick Scott's not a great incumbent, but Florida has proven that it is stubbornly red. Texas, more Republican down ballot, but again, Ted Cruz is not a very popular incumbent. But when you look at the number of vulnerable Democrats, you have, how you have Nevada of Jackie Rosen, you have Arizona of Kyrsten Sinema, who is, that will be mainly the topic of this video. She is, an independent, used to be a Democrat, but she's now an independent who is in the Democratic caucus. Up to Montana, you have John Tester, a very good incumbent, a very, strong candidate, but again, will be, facing an uphill, will be you know, fighting an uphill battle, to fight to win his reelection and state that Trump won by 16 points last time. Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin, that one could get interesting. It's a Wisconsin, it's a very competitive state, and I currently think she's going to win reelection, but we'll have to see, and we'll have to see if that changes. Michigan, this is an open seat. Debbie Stabenow's not running for reelection. This one will probably be fine for Democrats, but it's by no means safe. And Bob Casey in Pennsylvania is a decent candidate, but he's still very much in danger. And with West Virginia and Ohio are both very vulnerable, Democratic incumbents here. Sherrod Brown in Ohio, a very good, candidate as well, defied the odds before in this state, and in West Virginia, same with Joe Manchin, but both are extremely vulnerable, particularly Manchin. West Virginia is a state that voted for Donald Trump by 40 percentage points, and, with Democrats and Republicans at, a 51 to 49, with Democrats at 51 Senate seats and Republicans at 49, Republicans need at most 2 seats to take back the majority, or even one if they win the presidency, and, in that case, they'd get a vice president. who could break the 50-50 tie. But, really, Democrats really need to be worried about all these states, and it's going to take away money from their pickup opportunities. You may say that, well, the Democrats are doing, had an unfavorable map in 2022, but it was not, but to be fair, 2022's map was nothing like, this map. Democrats still had pickup opportunities in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina. Some would argue Ohio. They spent money in all of them. They only ended up flipping Pennsylvania, but it definitely helped them. It was the one state that flipped, the only Senate seat that flipped in 2022, and that gave them a 51 seat majority. But in 2024, it's going to be very hard for Democrats to hold on, especially when they could lose the majority with just two, with as with you know even if they hold most of their battleground seats, if they lose Montana, Ohio, and West Virginia, or two of these three, um, or even one, if they lose the presidency, they are in deep, deep trouble. And so, how does this relate to Arizona? Well, Kyrsten Sinema, as I said, is an independent. Used to be a Democrat, has drawn the ire of many Democrats with her opposition to President Joe Biden's agenda. And I don't think I really need to get into much of it. There was talk about primarying her. Ruben Gallego, the representative from the third congressional district, seemed to be the most likely challenger, and he has announced that he is running. And the polling data here looked atrocious for Sinema. You saw that no matter who she was put up against, Ruben Gallego, in this one poll conducted by Data for Progress last year, showed him at 74%, and Sinema at an abysmal 16%. She wasn't even cracking a quarter of the vote, not even 20%. And in most of these polls, she wasn't, getting, more than 25%, if that. And so, it's unclear to say, it's not, it's unclear if Sinema would have, moderated her tone had she stayed with the Democratic Party, but again, that is speculation, and it's not really the reality that we are working in. And so Gallego definitely seems to be the most likely, challenger to Sinema as a Democratic candidate. Greg Stanton from the Ninth District seemed like a potential candidate, but he is backed out of the race, and Gallego's wife, Kate, who's the mayor of Phoenix, she declined to run. So really, Gallego is the presumptive nominee for the Democrats. Let's look at the Republicans. Well, so if you don't, for context, if you're not familiar, the GOP in Arizona is not very good. Has in recent years has been really bad at nominating candidates. Last year in 2022, they nominated a full slate of election deniers for statewide office. Blake Masters for the Senate, Kari Lake for the governorship, Mark Finchem for Secretary of State, and they all had one thing in common. They were election deniers endorsed by Donald Trump, and they all lost. Now, the issue here for Republicans, and is that a lot of these people look like they're going to run again, or are expressing interest in running. Blake Masters, who lost to Mark Kelly by a whopping 5 percentage points in a state Biden won by less than half a point, is expressing interest. Karen Taylor Robson, she ran against Kari Lake in the Republican primary last year. I think that she would be a good candidate. Then you go down here and you see some more, some other names. You have Andy Biggs, the representative from the 5th Congressional District, a nationalized figure, a very Trumpian candidate. Juan Ciscomani is the newly elected representative from the 6th district. I think he would be decent. Kari Lake, she should really be in the publicly expressed interest category. I think actually, she's holding a rally today in Arizona, and she said that there was going to be a big announcement. So who knows? Maybe tonight we will actually get an announcement from Lake, because it seems like she's going to run. Beyond that, I won't get into all of them, but another person I would point out is David Schweikert, who is the Republican representative from the 1st district. Doug Ducey would have also been a decent candidate, but in terms of but he is not, he's announced that he is not running. He does not seem to be interested in the Senate anytime soon, and even if he was, he'd have a tough primary, and he may even lose that, because he's not that popular with Republicans, since he refused to, overturn the 2020 election results in the state. So basically, the problem for Democrats here is that with Gallego running and Sinema likely running, because, she knew that she was going to lose the primary, it really becomes, a problem of, will Gallego or Cinema split the vote, with each other, and will that, I guess, vote split be enough to elect a Republican, to the Senate? And the answer, I think, is yes. If you look at historical data, it is, very, in almost every, in a lot of situations, particularly in Senate elections, when there have been vote splits, it does not go well for the party that is divided. Now, do I think that Cinema is going, to uh, take away, 50, percent of the vote from Gallego? Absolutely not. I don't think that she's going to even get a majority of Democrats. But in a state like Arizona that is so closely divided, only voted for Biden by, less than half a point, as I mentioned, and voted for Katie Hobbs by, 0.6%. Even, a 1%, a 1%, vote split could make all the difference in this race. And the polling data reflects this as well. Gallego's campaign, this was before he announced his campaign, but Ruben Gallego put out this poll, which conducted a survey, of the hypothetical matchup between Carrie Lake, Gallego, and Kyrsten Sinema, and in this, it showed that Cinema was getting 13% of the vote, Carrie Lake was getting 41%, and Gallego was getting 40%, while 6% were undecided. And so, as you can see, this vote split is, this is a 13%, excuse me, this is a 13%, takeaway from the Democratic nominee in this hypothetical matchup, and that would, though it's narrow, it would, result in a Republican victory. Now, the undecideds could break for Democrats, but at the same time, and I don't think that Lake is going to get, 41% of the vote. I don't even think Gallego will get 40% of the vote. I don't think that the vote split's going to be 13%. But the polling data really backs this up. And if you look at the one-on-one matchups, Ruben Gallego defeats Kerry Lake by 1% in this hypothetical matchup, but because Cinema ends up losing to Lake by 3 points, and so I think that there is a case to be made about Cinema's unpopularity within the Democratic Party, potentially bringing her down. But the truth is, her running, them Democrats running a candidate isn't going to help either. And I'll show you historical, examples of when this has happened, when vote splitting has happened, and how it's turned out for, the party that is divided. So in 2010, there was a Senate race in Florida. Marco Rubio ended up winning with 49% of the vote. And this is before really Florida was a super red state, but what ended up happening is that the Democratic vote was split here. The anti-Rubio vote was split here. Charlie Crist was, at that time, the governor of Florida. He had been elected as a Republican in 2006. He decided to run for Senate in 2010 as a Republican, but he was not doing too well in the primary, so he dropped out and, ran as an independent. But the Democrats also put up their own candidate, Kendrick Meek, who got 20% of the vote, while Chris got 30% of the vote. And so, as you can see here, Rubio ended up winning with less than, 50% of the vote. And if you combine the Democratic vote of, with Christ and Meek, you can see that the two, if you add, the 30% and the 20%, that would end up being enough to overcome Rubio's, 49%. And so this really shows, that if Democrats were, this suggests that if Democrats were, united behind a certain candidate, most likely it would have been Charlie Crist. I think that there was talk about Meek dropping out at the time. But if they were united behind one candidate, there's potential that they could have won this race. But instead, they didn't, and they ended up losing by 20 points across the state, which was not a good look for them. And this is not the only example that I, thought of as well. In 2018, there was a Senate race in New Mexico, and what ended up happening is that the Democratic incumbent Martin Heinrich ended up winning by over 20 points despite only getting 54% of the vote. And the reason that this happened was because the Republican vote in this instance was split. The Republican Mick Rich only got 31% of the vote because Gary Johnson, who's a very famous libertarian, libertarian candidate who ran for president multiple times, got 15% of the vote. And, in this case, it would not have made a difference. New Mexico is a blue state. Heinrich would have won, regardless. But it does show how much, but this, like the other example does show the effects of vote splitting. I don't think that's, for the record, I don't think Sinema's going to get 14 or 13% of the vote. I think that she's going to get, high single digits. But, in a state like, Arizona, where, Democrats, have been successful recently, despite their success recently, they have not locked the state down. It is still winnable for Republicans if they run a good candidate. But the issue for Democrats here is that if they have a vote split, the vote, the votes could be, this party could be so divided that, a subpar GOP candidate like Carrie Lake or Blake Masters could be elected to the Senate, you know, because, in 2022, let's look at the results here. If you look at Mark Kelly's margin of victory, it was about a 5-point victory, and this was pretty impressive. This was a pretty bad showing for Blake Masters. It really confirmed, his that he was not a very good candidate, and that Arizona doesn't really like Trumpy Republicans. But that's besides the point. The point is Kelly got 51% of the vote. And this is impressive for a Democrat in Arizona. But what if you give if you take away 13% of the vote from here, Kelly would get like 38% of the vote. And so that would end up meaning the Masters would have won by 8. And so, and Kelly was one of the best performing Democrats in Arizona. If you look at Carrie Lake's, if you look at the governor's race, Carrie Lake and Katie Hobbs, Hobbs only won by 0.6%. It was very close, which means, let even, just a 1%, vote split. If, there was, say, Gallego ran on the ballot and got 1%, that would have meant that Carrie Lake would have won this race. And, if it only took away from Democrats. But, since he's a Democrat, it's likely that would have happened. So, you see my point. The vote splitting is not going to help Democrats, in Arizona. And so, you may be asking, well, how can, Democrats fix this? How can they hold on to Arizona, and, make it easier for them, make a more plausible path to a Senate majority? And the answer, you could go one of two directions. What the Democrats could do is something similar to what the Utah Democratic Party did, and that was don't run your own candidate. Get behind, Kyrsten Sinema, an independent who actually, who can appeal to moderates while keeping the Democratic base. And as long as you stay united, there's a good chance you win. And so that's what happened in Utah last year. Evan McMullen, an independent, conservative independent, who is known for his, for his for being, pretty, against Donald Trump, ran for Senate against Republican Senator Mike Lee. And while he still lost, he only lost by 10 points, and that was because the Utah Democrats and some conservatives, because Utah really likes Evan McMullen. He's a very popular guy there. He got a lot of Republicans and conservative people there to vote for him because a lot of them did not like Mike Lee. Now it wasn't enough to win, but you can see that you get my point that if Democrats had run a candidate, that would have split the anti-Lee vote, and it would have made it nearly impossible for them to win. There wasn't a real chance that McMullen wouldn't have won anyway. But we're not talking about Utah. We're talking about Arizona, which is a very purple state. Still viable. For both parties to win, Democratic leaning, but give it. If you give it. If the vote is split enough, it could very well end up electing a Republican. And so, what could end up happening here is the Democrats decide, have a state convention in Arizona, and they have some proposition to, encourage Gallego not to run so that they can unite behind Sinema and win. And that, and in that case, I think that Sinema would be favored here. Although I'm not saying that a united Democratic Party would ensure a victory, but it would make it a lot easier. Another thing you could do is that you could try, by somehow, some way, get Kyrsten Sinema to not run again, or encourage her not to run again, or if by some reason she retires due to health issues or, something. I don't think it's that likely that that ends up happening. But yet, if something along those lines happens, then Gallego could very well end up winning. He would do well with Hispanic voters. I think he would do decently well with moderates. As long as the GOP does not put up, a very strong candidate, a candidate who's very good for the suburbs. But the thing about that is that Gallego, is like, cinema is, someone who, is kind of known, I guess, over the last 2 years has been known for being, stubbornly against Joe Biden's agenda. In most cases, a lot of his, spending bills and a lot of his agenda have been blocked by her and Joe Manchin, and that's the problem. I think that Sinema would not go quietly. I do not think that she would end up running. I don't think that she would you know, voluntarily step down, or decide to, retire, or, make a deal. And so that's why I think the Democrats, the more likely and more plausible option they have to keeping the party united is to convince Gallego not to run. Problem for them is, will they do it? Personally, I don't know. I don't think that that's what's going to happen, but, once again, it's a long ways out. Things can change. And, there is, I'm not saying that the vote splitting is guaranteed. I mean, there will be some vote splitting, but I think it is likelier than not that that would ensure a Republican victory. A Republican victory. But, once again, we'll have to see. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like the video if you didn't, if you did like it. Uh, you know, Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Turn on notifications so you don't miss another video like this, and share it with someone that you think would enjoy this kind of content. Check out my non-political channel, Interactor127, and my comrades channel, Growling Zeus 666. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time when I talk about all things politics. See ya.